Nova Kooks.
Hello. We need just a few moments of your time.
That was a big hitter.
Ew.
Oh.
It was kind of like Quantum Leap, but for
A little bit, very quantum leap.
Yeah,
Quantum leap. Don't get me wrong.
You're not going to stick to the script on this question.
I'm going to
are you?
break the script, I think.
Keep it Swayze the whole time.
Little Hen says it's time to rock and roll.
Welcome, listener. You're listening to the Nova Kooks, episode 4. We are 4 East Coast surfers that don't take ourselves too seriously when it comes to surfing or other things, hence our name, the Nova Kooks. In this podcast, you will hear us talk about surfing on the East Coast of Canada and hear some funny surf stories from our inexperience along the way. This podcast is meant to not only take you on our surf journey, but to also explore personal growth, adventure, and the world around us, including pop culture and other things. Today's episode is the Point Break episode. We will dedicate our discussion to Point Break today, discussing our love for the film, director, actors, and cameos, as well as why this movie is so important to the four of us. Of course, at the end, we will get another awesome question from Charles to finish out our episode. Before we begin, I am Jared, and I will be your host. I'm seated with Charles, Josh, and David.
I have several questions I want you to consider.
To start off the Point Break episode, I have prepared a warm-up question. As some people say, Point Break started with a book by Kevin Nunn called Tapping the Source. I got a chance to read this book, and we will discuss this more later. But my question for you guys is, what is the first book to movie adaptation that pops into your mind that was good and was either better than the book or at least worked well? Because as you always hear, the book is always better than the movie. Charles, you said that you had an idea earlier.
It's not really something that I think about that much or have much experience with. Typically I find a book is better than a movie, and I typically don't really look forward to when they make movies out of books that I love. But one thing that is interesting about Point Break, so Point Break came out in 1991. At that time, I was a kid, I was a huge movie buff, and one thing that I really loved, and I remember getting really into that summer, was novelizations of movies. So I remember that summer I had the novelization of Terminator 2, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and I think it was like from the previous year, for some reason I had the novelization of Another 48 Hours. But I remember, and I actually read, because it was somehow delayed with Terminator 2 coming to Cape Breton, and I was like so pumped to see it. I actually read the Terminator 2 book first before I saw the movie.
Crazy.
Which I enjoyed and kind of got into more like deeper story details. But the movie was superior.
Great answer. I remember reading books like that too. Thanks, Charles. I would say that mine was the movie Batman Begins, and it was based on a comic by Frank Miller, which was Batman Year One, I think. I remember reading that comic book, and then when I was watching Batman Begins, I was like, wait a second, this all sounds so familiar. And yeah, it was a pretty good adaptation of it. There was a lot of changes, and I think in Christopher Nolan's Batman movies, he kind of took a lot of liberties. Like, he took a lot of different ideas from different books. There's the Dark Knight Returns, and there's the Long Halloween, and you could totally take elements from all of those comic books and see them in the Nolan movies.
I actually had the Batman 1989 novelization as well there. So
that's awesome. I'm trying to think.
The
of
movie was
movies
better.
I think I had the novelization of Ninja Turtles: Secret of the Ooze. Yeah,
Wow.
I had the Total Recall novelization.
Nice.
The Dick Tracy novelization.
I had that. I read that.
I had the Harry and the Hendersons novelization, but I never read it.
Seriously? Oh my God.
Do you think that the novelizations of movies are like quality though?
No, but basically historically, it's kind of part of the marketing around a movie. And the fact that, sometimes like a movie wouldn't necessarily play anywhere, so there would be a bit of a demand. But something that's recent that's interesting is that Quentin Tarantino actually did a novelization of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and he's a big movie buff, right? So he's kind of like, that's kind of harkened back to like these paperback novelizations, which is why he wanted it released paperback first.
But did he write it?
Oh yeah, he wrote it.
So that's probably different.
And the thing that's really cool about that book, if you like the movie Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's a deeper dive into things, and also the way that things are structured. It's a bit different, and he's an excellent writer as well. But definitely a homage to those pulpy novelizations.
That's cool. I guess I didn't pay attention to them. The fact that happens, a novelization of a movie, I just kind of thought.
I always remember seeing it at, like, when I was a kid, I'd see them at like the grocery store and be like,
Totally, yeah.
Like that you can, and they'd be like cheaper.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people that would rather read the book than go see a movie. Like, there's plenty of people that don't like movies.
Often in the center of them, there'd be like colored photos from the movie.
As a kid, I totally bought some things like that just because there were color pictures halfway through. Like, it was like a children's book about the Full House series, but it had color pictures, so I was all in.
Yeah.
All in on Dave.
So what about you, Josh? Do you have any book to movie adaptations that you can think of?
That's a tough one. The things I like to read aren't really the type of things that get made into movies, to be honest with you. I do love movies, don't get me wrong.
You're not going to stick to the script on this question.
I'm going to break the script, I think. I'm currently reading like 4 different books, but
tell us one, then.
The most prominent one would be How to Avoid a Climate Disaster by Bill Gates.
Yes.
Oh, I've heard about
Some
that.
light reading.
Yeah. I usually read it before bed.
Nice.
It's good. I highly
recommend
it. Yeah.
What about you, Dave?
I'm kind of with Josh on this one. Most of the reading I do are biographies, autobiographies, and sadly, not a lot of them are, directly, turned into movies or so. Can't really answer that one to the best of my ability. But listening to Charles with my nephew, I like to read with my nephew a lot, who's 7 years old. And this isn't linked, but it is. They've sort of redone in children's book format, movies such as Back to the Future.
Yes,
and
I know what you're talking
I'll tell you what, I get pretty fired up. Yeah. Now, it's obviously not as complex as the movie, time travel, etc., DeLoreans, but pretty cool to read. And that's my connection with this question.
Yeah, there's a whole series of those. I read the Karate Kid.
Yes.
Yeah. I was reading it, like flipping through it at the bookstore the other day. Yeah.
Just with you mentioning biographies, that does make me think, like, so I would have read Motley Crue's The Dirt, the book, which they turned into a movie. I thought the book was superior to the movie.
Of course. Yeah. Dave, you're really into reading biographies of, you read like a lot of Chili Peppers. And,
like Anthony Kiedis's Scar Tissue. I enjoy stuff like that. So Anthony Kiedis will probably come up again later in the podcast.
Good segue.
This is a perfect segue.
Well.
Because let's move on to the next section.
Next, please.
Little Hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Ayo.
After a string of bizarre bank robberies in Southern California with the crooks donning masks of various ex-presidents, a federal agent, Johnny Utah, played by Keanu Reeves, infiltrates the suspected gang with his help from goofy veteran agent Pappas, played by Gary Busey. But this is no ordinary group of robbers. Turns out they're surfers, led by the charismatic Bodie, played by Patrick Swayze. And these surfers are adrenaline rush junkies. But when Utah falls in love with a female surfer, Tyler, played by Lori Petty, who is close to the gang, it complicates his sense of duty. Of course, I'm talking about Point Break. The release date for Point Break was summer of 1991, July 12th to be exact. And the director was Catherine Bigelow, who went on to direct several amazing movies and was the first female to win an Oscar, which is well overdue.
Best director.
Yeah. an Oscar for Best Director.
Did she win an Oscar for?
No, she won an Oscar for her.
It was The Hurt Locker that she won the Best
The
Director
Hurt
Oscar.
Locker.
Yeah. She's done that. Zero Dark 30,
No way.
Strange Days.
Strange
Interesting.
Days.
Some cool movies.
She did Strange Days.
Yeah.
That's another movie that is like highly underestimated that I love.
Yeah, you forget about it.
I love that movie. Point Break's concept was by a guy named Rick King, who was a movie producer. I guess he was on a beach in California, and he may have done a surf lesson. And I guess during that time that he was sitting on the beach back in the 80s, I think there was like a couple string of bank robberies, and he started just thinking like, how crazy would it be if they were surfers? And that's sort of where the idea kind of began. And then this guy, Peter Iliff, who was an aspiring screenwriter, but at the time was a waiter, for $6,000 got hired on to write the script for Point Break. But yeah, let's get into talking more about Point Break. It's one of the greatest action films of all time, and it's also the first movie to incorporate big wave surfing. So guys, what's your favorite moment from the movie? The standout moment for you that you really connect, that like when that moment happens, or when you think about Point Break, what do you connect with?
I
Josh?
really liked the first scene and the colors of the wetsuits.
Yeah.
Because I didn't watch the movie until 2021.
Wow. Okay. Late to the game.
Yeah, late to the game.
I
So
like
it was
it.
all very 90s to me.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, that being said, I vividly remember the bank scene. So it's quite possible I saw this
Okay.
20-some years ago.
Yeah.
But
I remember that summer very clearly. I was on a family vacation, and we were in Bangor, Maine, and we went to the movies. We decided to do a movie night. I think it was raining or something, and we had just spent all day outlet shopping at LL Bean and places like that. And we went to the movies, and I remember the options were, and I think I was a 9-year-old at the time, but I was allowed to go to these movies because all the older cousins were there, and they, my parents just were like, yeah, sure. But there was Terminator 2, there was Backdraft, there was Point Break,
great film.
and there was Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. And all of those movies were great, and I wanted to see all of them. But for some reason, the movie poster with the waves and the ex-presidents with the guns on a rock with this wave splashing behind them just hooked me, and I was like, that one. So
Yeah.
and I remember my favorite part of that movie at the time was when he went into the surf shop and bought a board, and I was like, you said it in our first episode, like he acted like such a kook, and I was just like, I loved it because I could relate to the character, and I was like, I want to learn to surf just like Johnny Utah.
I think every surf shop should have a 12-year-old behind the counter
Yeah.
who makes fun of how old you are.
Yeah.
Because and I think Keanu's like, I'm 25.
Yeah.
And the kid's like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Surfing's the source, dude.
The surfing's the source. Yeah. Oh,
Oh, I love
and then
that
he
kid.
sticks the wax in his jeans, like his.
Yeah. Oh, man.
He's in California wearing these long jeans and
Love
sticks the
it.
wax. Oh, it's great.
There's so many great moments from this movie.
Yeah, there
are
But
so many great moments.
What's your favorite, Dave?
My favorite moment of this movie? I don't know. There's something about the party scene when they go to Bodhi's house and he goes, and it's sort of like, I just feel like it's sort of a moment where he's really immersed in sort of the culture and the craziness around surfing. And there's like fire breathers and
Yeah.
like fires and a lot of Jimi Hendrix and, a lot of like bold imagery of what, probably people think of surfing, and then the stealth mission where they go surfing at night. I don't know. There's something about that
And-
I think about.
Patrick Swayze's so like philosophical and like
Listen.
hippie in that moment, just shining in the firelight, talking about
Oh, man.
like life and you got to seize the day.
And they're
But
sitting
he's-
around the fire talking about,
He talks like that, but then he's so violent.
oh,
Yeah, I buy it though.
shout out to Swayze.
Swayze, yeah.
Shout out
Yeah, I
to
love
Swayze.
Patrick Swayze.
It's
What about-
interesting because I remember when this movie was coming out, I think I had reservations, and I was just a kid, reservations about seeing it because I was thinking like, well, Patrick Swayze, that's the Dirty Dancing guy. Like,
Yeah.
he's not cool. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not sure about this. But I remember going to see it with my aunt, and I would have been curious about it because I remember the trailers look really cool, and they're surfing and they're skydiving and all that stuff. But I remember, like, as we were discussing, like, that was like a big, like, blockbuster summer. But I remember, like, watching it and thinking, like, wow, that may be better than Terminator 2. Like, that was pretty amazing in terms of, like, the bank robbery scenes. You got the skydiving scenes. You have the surfing scenes. It's such kinetic action sequences. Like,
and it's all very real. Like Terminator's like one thing over here, but like Point Break is like
It's realistic in a way.
It's like a real action movie.
And that was an interesting thing rewatching it recently, because we've done like a thing where some of us have been rewatching during the pandemic some of these 80s movies, and there's a lot of the tropes of the 80s movies and the one-liners, and you have all of that stuff in Point Break, but it doesn't seem as cheesy. You kind of buy into it a bit more.
Well, there was also like this rare thing that happened to that movie where there was like this dynamic with all of the characters, and you could tell that, I don't know, sometimes you can really tell when the people making the movie are having a lot of fun, and you could tell it translated with this movie, I think.
I think when Gary, and I know I'm not saying the character's name, but when Busey and Reeves are sitting around the office, like the FBI office, and it's sort of the first moment where they kind of connect, and they're sitting around the office having some Coronas and some Jack Daniels, and sort of Busey is, or Pappas. is giving Johnny Utah sort of like these guys are surfers and I'm gonna sell you on this.
Yeah.
There's something really cool about that. And you can tell, like, I know they're sitting having some beers at the old office and stuff, but you can tell they're kind of sitting around having a great time.
And they jump on the desk.
Yeah.
Whoa!
Yeah. Anyways.
I love that writing style from the 90s, like
Yeah.
80s, 90s.
Yeah,
totally.
Especially the whole like cop duo vibe.
Yeah.
Oh,
Another
so
48 hours.
I'm so happy you said that. And if I'm a little bit off topic, let me know.
It's
but
okay. Yeah.
when there's the other buddies, the duo that they work with,
Oh, yes.
Oh,
The
yeah.
other two cops.
who just like bust their butts all the time, like,
Yeah.
hey Pappas, and he's got the best voice.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell him your theory?
Yeah. It's like, tell him your theory, dude. Gnarly.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Sorry. I love that.
And then you have the FBI director Harp, like,
Oh.
as
Oh my
well,
gosh.
kind of like giving them
Brilliant.
grief
So-
all the time.
Yeah, so that was-
it's so many great lines from him. So
Yeah, so we're talking about these characters. Let's get into it a little bit more. So that guy, what's his name? Harp?
yep.
So yeah, John C. McGinley is the actor, and I think he's one of the most underrated actors. Anything he's in, he is just hilarious as an angry man. Funny at the same time.
What
Like,
was the medical
Scrubs?
Scrubs.
He was
great in
so
Scrubs.
good in Scrubs.
And I didn't watch that religiously, but like he was that perfect
Yeah.
bad, like hard character.
Hard, but like there was like a
Yep.
like a quality that
Yeah.
of love to him too. He was
Totally.
great. Let's talk real quick about Lori Petty. Lori Petty, I was researching for this podcast. I was reading how Lori Petty, was so surprised to get the role, and part of the reason that she got the role, they're sort of attributing it to it's attributed to Catherine Bigelow, because she wanted to have like the love interest be like this strong character, and I think the character in the original screenplay was like a blonde surfer chick, like that stereotypical California girl, suntanned, and then they went for Lori Petty that didn't fit that stereotype. But I honestly think that made it feel more real, like that love interest. Like, I thought that was awesome, and she's such an amazing actress. Another very underrated actress who I wish like had more roles. She did Tank Girl, which I don't know. I think that was like a kind of like a cult classic, but I thought Tank Girl was kind of cool, though.
She also did A League of Their Own.
Oh,
Hey.
she was
Oh,
great.
yeah.
The sister,
Ayo.
yeah. She was really good.
I think Tom
great in
Hanks
that.
was in that too, right?
Oh
Yeah, that was his. Yeah.
And Madonna
Madonna.
and Rosie O'Donnell.
And
Oh, yeah.
Rosie O'Donnell.
Gina Davis.
And Gina Davis.
That was a
Yeah.
big hitter. Ayo. Oh.
Awesome.
Well, another great scene. I'll stop prefacing everything I say with that, is when Pappas is like, "This is your surf contact, 5'2", 114 pounds," and he's kind of
Blue
like
eyes.
just
yeah.
black hair. So he's kind of like touching on all those
Yeah.
stereotypes that he's kind of saying are the opposite of what he was hoping for.
So let's talk about Pappas for a second. Gary Busey. So Gary Busey, I found out, had just had like brain surgery. He's just coming off of like...
Before this movie or recently?
Yeah, so right before the movie, he had
wow.
brain surgery. So he was just coming off of like healing, like... Yeah, so he was like a little nervous to do it, but he was like the hit. Like I was like, I watched this behind the scenes thing that you can see on YouTube, and I guess he was like the hit because he's just kind of like a wild man, and like you never know what he's going to do, and he brought that right into his character. And like him jumping off into the pool at the beginning, like whee!
He was just being himself.
I think that was just him jumping in the pool.
Scooby, like so great. Scooby. You see a little dog. That was his go-to.
Yeah, that was great.
He was so great, and like the chemistry was perfect because, well, Keanu. I mean,
Yeah.
it's funny that Keanu was like the lead of this movie.
Yeah.
And let's just be honest about Keanu's block acting in this movie. Like it worked,
Oh yeah.
but I am an FBI agent. He was a little I don't know what was going on with Keanu in this, because we've seen him, like Keanu is huge now. He's an amazing actor. He's done a lot of incredible things.
That was kind of the weird thing, because when he did do Speed, it was kind of like people forgot that he'd done Point Break, because people were just sort of like, what's he doing in an action movie? But
Oh
you
yeah,
know,
I remember
he did
that.
this, so yeah.
But he even with his like odd acting, I feel like when Keanu was back in his 20s, I think he was 26 when he did this, and he was said he played a 25-year-old, but he it worked.
Yeah, totally.
It which is also funny because Keanu's like 10 years older than Gary Busey was in the movie now that we're doing this. Just a little bit of a mind
Wait,
trip
I'm
for
wrapping my head around that.
you. Yeah, he's like 10 years older than Gary Busey was when the movie was
Right.
filmed.
Just got it.
Yeah.
I feel like Keanu Reeves says he, like, that was his shtick and it worked, and then that is what, like, people just gravitated to it. I don't know, because he's a similar character in Speed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
Also, okay, we're talking about actors. Let's talk about Patrick Swayze for a minute. You were talking about how you felt about, watching Point Break. I don't know about this Patrick Swayze movie because,
Well, he
Dirty
was,
Dancing.
most handsome man in the world,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, and coming off Dirty Dancing, but also coming off of Roadhouse, which I think I need to
Yes.
rewatch.
yeah,
soon.
I think so. Yeah, but also like to us, young boys at the time, like Patrick Swayze did not appeal to us as like an action hero, but this movie, he was incredible, and he worked his butt off in this movie. Apparently, he had a love for skydiving, and preparing for the role, he had done over 40 dives,
Wow.
40 jumps, and I think he even, was it surfing or skydiving? He broke, like, not filming, but like in preparing, I think he broke 4 ribs. So during the filming of this movie, he was like nursing 4 broken ribs.
Yeah, I was reading something before, because he'd always he didn't like to use stuntmen
Yeah,
in
he
the past,
never-
so he wanted to do like all his surfing stuff here. And
Mhm.
there's certainly like parts, like especially like at the end, that it is like a stunt double.
Yeah.
But also, like, I guess with that skydiving scene, like they actually
Yeah.
like he did like 50 dives or something with that, like,
Yeah.
so they could film that, which is, I mean, that's pretty incredible.
And that was one of the things that he kept vying for. He kept saying, like, because they weren't going to, because you can't talk and film it like properly. You can't really think straight to perform dialogue in front of a camera while you're skydiving. So that was actually done while they were hanging, but he wanted to make sure they had actual shots of it, and they got actual shots of it. Like all the actors actually did do a couple jumps, and they filmed it.
Both of those are incredible scenes. And I'd kind of mixed up the two of them. There's the first one where they go skydiving, and then there's the one where Keanu just jumps out of the plane after him without a chute. So
Another cool thing about Patrick Swayze too is the chase scene. There's a chase scene where Keanu's running after him after the bank robbery. Like he figures them out and he's chasing after him, and Patrick Swayze never takes the mask off. But he didn't have to. Like, it worked well in the scene. But apparently that was his stunt double because Patrick Swayze was doing press that week for Ghost.
Oh, wow.
So it worked out well. It was like this, but it worked for the movie for him to not show his face. Like, it worked. And I think like there's some close-ups where you can see and you can sort of tell that that's Patrick Swayze's eyes behind there. But yeah, I thought that was cool.
There's a great gasoline fight in that chase scene.
Oh, when he lights up the nozzle there, yeah.
Oh yeah,
He's running on fire. Yeah, it's amazing.
And when
Creepy looking too. Yeah.
When Keanu is chasing him like through the alleys and like through those homes, at one point Swayze throws a dog at him.
Yeah. Apparently that scene was really difficult to do because there was a lot of steady cam, and yeah, that was cool. That was a cool scene. Speaking of actors, let's also talk about Anthony Kiedis. We were talking about him earlier with books.
Gladly.
Yeah. Anthony Kiedis made his way into this film, and he was on another surfer crew that I guess Johnny Utah suspected earlier in the film.
His character's name is Tone.
Yeah, I thought it was the greatest cameo because it was like kind of humbling because he's like doesn't play the greatest character. Like, he gets knocked out first in the fight scene, but that's also because Anthony missed all of the choreography. Like, when they were doing fight training, all the actors had to show up, but he didn't show up. So part of his punishment was less screen time. He got punched out first.
Having read Scar Tissue, that seems very fitting that he would have not shown up. And
who knows where he was? Under a bridge.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
But then also, like, he gets shot in the foot, like, pretty early on in the, like...
I was going to say, like, every time, like, he has minimal screen time, but anytime he's on screen, like, he's really kind of bringing it. Like, just even when you first see him and he has that sideways smirk on his face.
Because if he didn't, that would be a waste of time.
Boom. Yeah, nice.
And what I love is when they're gonna do the raid on the house with their crew, and Keanu is like outside the window, and he has that little magnifying glass that he's looking into the window, and it's just Anthony Kiedis or Tone like on his bed, like in these Union Jack shorts, listening to metal music and just
dancing,
pounding on himself.
Wearing big music. White like Converse Cons basketball sneakers.
Were they or were they?
They might.
I feel like
I
they were
just pulled
pumps.
Cons out because I was so 90s.
Right. I think they were
pumps. They were big white shoes. When Anthony Kiedis shoots himself in the foot when the door closes on him, great close-up of a blowing up sneaker.
Yeah.
This was a real action movie.
It's funny because I remember in my memory, I remember those sneakers being dirty, but then from rewatching it, it was dirty from his blood.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know what they use, a cap or whatever. When they do a funny kind of.
He did a great job though, man.
Classic.
He was all sweaty and like,
Yeah, he was very upset.
He was a lunatic.
As one is when they shoot themselves in the foot.
I just want to talk real quick about when I was researching the origins of Point Break, I found that nobody from the Point Break camp talks about the book that the book talks about being how do they say it? It says like this is a reissue of the classic. They say this classic novel inspired the movie Point Break. So I'm wondering if maybe the screenwriter used it, but I read the book and there are few similarities. Definitely the surf shop scene, I think, came from this book. It's very similar. A little kid kind of making fun of this guy. But the guy in this is also younger. He's only like 19 in this book. He plays, it's not Johnny Utah. It's this guy, Ike. I think his name's Ike.
Ike Nebraska.
Not Ike Nebraska and not Ike Turner. I forget his name right now. It was a little while since I've read it. But it's this kid, Ike, and he's not a football player. He's like this motorcycle fix-it guy, and his sister ends up going missing, and this person that knew his sister stops by his place, and like the garage, and with a surfboard on top and of his car, and says like, your sister wanted me to find you if she ever were to go missing. And he ends up going and sort of like figuring out that like she was hanging out with these rough, tough surfers that were like kind of these bad guys in this gang. And that's really like the only parallel, really, other than that, and like maybe little moments you can that are kind of similar. But I was looking on the internet and I couldn't find. And none of you guys have read Tapping the Source, right?
No. And so you're saying that it's the author claims that Point Break, that they kind of stole his ideas for Point Break, or is it the screenwriter used this as some source material, or?
It's just on the internet. When you look up Tapping the Source, or if you look up novel that inspired Point Break, you'll find Tapping the Source. And on the back of the book, it says this classic novel inspired the movie Point Break.
Cool.
But Point Break, like I'll research it on their Wikipedia page. It says nothing about Tapping the Source. I look into and the whole story is that producer saying, I thought of this idea on the beach, and then I hired this writer to come up with the story. So I'm thinking maybe the writer was looking for inspiration and maybe use this.
Have you read it?
I read it, yeah, a while ago.
Is it good?
It's a great book.
Right.
Oh yeah, and it's won like awards, the National Book Award, or it was a finalist anyway. But yeah, no, I really enjoy the book. It's like you can, yeah, it's
nice.
It's a page turner for sure. I didn't want to put it down. I highly recommend it. If you like the story of Point Break, read this book. But I find that interesting. I also find it interesting in my research of the book and adaptations that Point Break became its own stage show. Like they made like a play out of Point Break, which is also pretty cool.
I'd like to hear or read the reviews on that.
I was reading a bit about that as well, and basically what they would do is they would just select a member of the audience to come up and play the Johnny Utah part.
Oh,
and they would just read the lines for them. So you're kind of given this wooden Keanu, reading, right? So it becomes this interactive experience with the audience, which sounds kind of fun.
Around the era of the movie? Or?
I just want to be like you and surf. Yeah. Like they have to read cards off stage. It'd be hilarious to watch. I'd love to play Johnny Utah.
Who wouldn't?
Yeah.
It's probably pretty close to the original performance.
Yeah.
Which again, it worked. I don't know.
All right. So with the movie and the rewatch, a couple of questions that came to me. Okay, so Pappas in Utah, they do the stakeout. They catch Bodie and his crew coming out of the bank. They end up doing the chase through the alleyways. So Bodie knows who Utah is. He knows that he's FBI. So the next day, he shows up at his place and he takes him skydiving. Why?
Why did Bodie take Utah skydiving?
Yeah, he knows he's FBI. Why does he take him out skydiving?
I think he took him out to get him out of the house so that they could capture
Tyler.
Yeah. I think it was like, let's because if he was around, he's an FBI agent with some skills. We got to get him out of the house so we can kidnap her.
I also think that Bodie's such a philosophical guy that he still had this connection to Johnny. Do you know what I mean? And he still wanted to, like, he didn't want to let go of that, but he also wanted to mess with him. Yeah, I think it was like this weird conundrum that Bodie was actually going through.
I would agree.
And the other guys, he was playing it up to the other guys as being like, no, we're bad guys and we're going to do this or something. But
wasn't there like a moment to like test him to see if he would actually just come into the whole thing, like come into the fold?
I don't think so, because then they took him because they didn't give him a mask, and that was a sort of like, if they had given him a mask too, I would agree with that, because it could be read that way, but they didn't give him a mask, and they were messing with him, yeah, okay. and they knew that they were implicating him and his involvement, and then he'd be like sort of messed over after.
Yeah. Great question, though.
No, and that makes sense in terms of like it's an opportunity where they can get Tyler. And I think kind of what you're saying, Jared, like there's definitely like this mutual respect between Bodie and Utah. And also just like the positioning of that scene, it just creates this great suspense. Because I remember watching it the first time and thinking like, oh, is he taking the shoot that isn't going to work, and this is how they're going to knock him off?
Right.
Now that I'm thinking this through, back then, and there's a few of these technological things that I love thinking about, now versus then. But to get a videotape of her out to the desert into the van by the time they got in an airplane, and
Totally.
I'm not trying to poke holes in this incredible movie, but I'm just now thinking
maybe
not
that's
a
why
cell
they were like,
phone.
okay, we need to kill some. We're getting to
Here's
get
what we
her,
need
but we
to
need
do.
to kill some time, so we're
Yeah,
gonna
the plane's-
skydive and
Yeah.
bond over it.
Sorry.
and then we'll get the tape from Rosie, and
and then
yeah.
someone get this out to the desert stat. Sorry.
Great scene.
I
Great
just
scene.
thought about it. Great scene.
All right, another question. So the end of the movie. So at the end of the movie, Utah catches Bodhi in Australia, where he's at the beach, and it's that wave that he's waited his whole life for. It's from the 50-year storm. So Utah lets Bodhi go out to catch a wave. So Bodhi gets out there. He's paddling pretty hard, tries for the wave, doesn't make it, goes down with it. Did he miss on purpose?
I don't know if he missed on purpose, but I think he died.
Yeah. He went to another plane, another world. I think when Johnny Utah says, another one of my favorite lines, and it's more of a popular Spanish saying, "Vaya con Dios." He knows that, because they do have that, and you spoke to this earlier, that brotherhood, that connection on a higher level. Yeah, there's the practical things in front of them, but sort of like, we're brothers. We kind of we kind of have this connection. When he said "Vaya con Dios" and walked away, I think there was sort of an unspoken thing like, this is it for me.
What does Vaya con Dios mean?
Go with God, essentially. Yeah. So I think it was basically him knowing, and them both tipping a cap to each other, going like,
There was a mutual respect that was...
Yeah,
absolutely.
like Keanu or Johnny. His whole thing was he had to finish that and make things right because he's the FBI cop.
Yeah.
Or good cop. And Bodhi, thank you. Was like, it was either he was going to surf this wave or that was it.
Yeah.
And it, surfing the wave was like, okay, I achieved my life's dream. I'll go to prison.
Yeah.
He missed it.
Yeah.
There's no other life to be led, sort of thing. I think he died, but
Yeah,
that's
me
just
too.
me.
Me too. Bodhi can't survive in a cage.
Great
good
question, Charles.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to feel bad if we don't talk about this before we move on. What is your favorite quote from Point Break? Rapid fire. Dave, we know yours. What is it? Let's say it.
Utah, give me two.
Give me two.
Yeah, I love that. I use that. I probably do that 4 or 5 times a year.
I think that is what solidified our friendship, is when you had told me to do that.
Yeah.
And I think I was getting hot dogs at a school barbecue. You're like, hey, Utah, two.
Give me
two.
That's that was going to be mine. That is just ingrained in my head, and I
Isn't
just
it?
find it hilarious.
And I think that was Gary Busey improvising.
And just going into that scene, so that's when they're staking out the bank and they're waiting for the robbery there. But just like when it starts in on that scene, it's just Gary Busey's there. He's reading the cartoons. He's just like, this Calvin and Hobbes is funny.
Oh, yeah, I love
just
that.
being a maniac, and then he's just like,
He loves
they got
Calvin
this
and
place
Hobbes.
that has these great meatball subs.
Yeah.
2.
Yeah.
I should have got 3.
And what does Johnny Utah order for himself at that sandwich shop?
Tuna on whole grain or
Johnny Utah from Ohio.
Oh my
Tuna
God.
on whole wheat.
So bad.
I have a earlier quote from Harp. Part of this year always stuck with me, but the whole quote is actually pretty hilarious. So it's Harp. You're a blue flame special. Young, dumb, and full of I guess we just must have it. shortage.
And then Johnny Utah's
Then
like,
he says,
then Johnny Utah fires back. What
Yeah.
does he say? He's like, basically like, no, sounds like we've got lots of them. Like,
No, what does
he
he
says
say?
it way better, obviously.
I actually can't answer my own question. There's
Well,
so
there's
many.
so many.
There's so many.
I think I have one that's from Pappas. It says, let me tell you something, Harp. I was in this bureau while you were still popping zits on your funny face and to the lingerie section of this year's catalog.
I think I really like when Tyler's teaching Johnny how to surf, and when he finally stands, she's just so awkwardly, "You're surfing," and I remember being like, so cheesy. It's
Yeah.
so cheesy, but I just loved it. But I gotta say, my favorite quote is definitely Patrick Swayze says it twice. It's time to rock and roll.
Nice.
He does it on the way to the bank, and then he does it right before he jumps off. And that was actually him jumping out of a plane, and it was for real. He was actually free jumping like out of the plane. Let's rock and roll. Okay, it's that time again for the always intriguing final question from Charles. Take it away, Charles.
This is Charles.
Okay, this week's question. You're visiting Los Angeles. Who do you want to take you surfing? Bodie, Utah, or Tyler? And why?
I'm going to go first. Tyler.
Yeah?
Because she'll say, "You're surfing!"
You're surfing! She was pretty hard on him, though.
Yeah, but I would need that from Tyler.
That's fair.
From Tyler.
They'll be picking you off the reef like your fish food.
Yes.
I'd go with Bodie. He's got all his buds out there on the water. They're just hanging out, doing their thing.
Getting philosophical.
Yeah. Having a good time, pushing the limits. The bank limit might have been a bit much.
Ooh.
Maybe kidnapping might have been a bit much, but before that.
Hey. Yeah, I'm going. I gotta go Bodie. Keep it Swayze the whole time. Just I feel like you'd feel all the parts of the surfing. That thing that is right there. It's right there, Johnny. When he's I don't know. I just think it'd be a fun time surfing with buds. He'd give you the true California experience, I think.
What about you, Charles?
I'm going to go with Bodie as well. I mean, one thing about Bodie, he can get, pretty violent, pretty crazy at times, but he's also, I think he can kind of read people. He's a nice guy. He would kind of ease you into it. And he'd probably really help you.
I think it's pretty interesting that, we didn't mention Keanu, but fun fact, Keanu fell in love with surfing after doing this movie. And I'm trying to figure out what surf company sponsored him, but there was a surf company actually didn't sponsor him. A surf company actually made him a board. There was at a time a Keanu Reeves board that you could get.
I hope it looks like the board he buys from that 12-year-old punk.
Yeah, with the flames. All right, well, thanks for listening. I've been Jared Gates, your host.
David Roger.
Josh I.
Charles.
Vaya con Diaz. Adios, amigos. Thanks for listening to Nova Kooks. This has been our 4th episode. Join us next time for more kooky surf moments, beginner surf tips, music and movie talks, eccentric questions from Charles, and next time on the podcast, we're going to talk about what the best beginner surf beach in Nova Scotia is. It should be a really good time. Don't forget to follow along on Instagram for more Nova Kook adventures. Thanks and be well.